again, it's John Danner, co-author of The Other F Word, How Smart Leaders, Teams, and Entrepreneurs Put Failure to Work. I'm going to share with you in this episode of our series on the resilient entrepreneur with my co-author, Mark Cooper-Smith, and our sponsor, the Nick, a particular stage in the failure value cycle, which Mark introduced to you a while back. And this is really the first stage. It's one that, frankly, Mark and I had not expected to include when we set about writing the book and doing our research, but it became pretty apparent that it's the most important place to start in this failure value cycle if we want to turn failure from a regret into a strategic resource. And it is about respect. Now, you all know Aretha Franklin's R.E.S.P.E.C.T, and you can keep that in mind if it helps you remember where this failure value cycle starts. We've suggested to you that failure is a lot like gravity. It's a fact of nature and to some extent a force of nature. And you can try to deny it or defy it, but you probably do so at your peril because it is likely to be inevitable in your organization. After all, we're all human beings, fallible. We make mistakes, we screw up, we goof. And we also know that this topic carries a lot of baggage. The word itself is tough for people to talk about. You know, and we all know what it feels like when failure is present. You feel alone, you feel isolated. It feels sometimes almost like you're drowning. One of the things that I often ask my students to do in my classes on failure is to draw their mental picture of failure. And oftentimes they start with something like a downward spiral, you know, that once you're in the middle of it, it just pulls you in almost like a black hole in space. So we understand that and recognize that. But what do you do with that fact when it comes to turning it around from a fear, from a taboo, into something that you can genuinely talk about? It starts with respect. Now, in the book, we've given you some suggestions about how you might begin to start a conversation about failure. And here they are. You know, 6 pretty simple ways to have what some people call difficult conversations. You know, talk with your colleagues or even talk with your friends about this issue, because it may help you get comfortable with discussing what it feels like to have failure, what you learn from it, how you can potentially make fun of it, enjoy thinking about it afterwards, but better yet, think about how you can better deal with it in the moment. So take a look, right? Start off. Our organization is comfortable honestly talking about failure. Is that true? If it is, got some examples? We have regular meetings or processes that incorporate learning and leveraging failures, whether they're big or small. Does that sound like your organization? Does it sound like how you run your organization? If not, maybe give it some more thought. Our culture treats failure as a taboo. It's difficult to acknowledge failures or discuss them openly. That's going to prompt some conversation, I suspect. Or number 4, we openly share stories about previous failures, about what we've learned and why. We all learn through stories. Failure stories are all over the place. In one of my classes at Princeton, I asked students to do a failure of the week, just a simple 1-page summary of a failure that they've seen on the web or in the news. And there are no shortage of stories to tell. And I suspect your own organization and your own career and life, or those of your colleagues, probably give you a lot of stories to work from as well. 5, our organization fairly treats people who've been involved with a failure, assessing their contributions and the process, and not just the results. Because that's what failures usually end up being, the results of experiments. So what is it that you learned from the experiment that created perhaps an unwelcome outcome, but also some insight, some understanding that you didn't have before? And finally, can you recall a recent specific failure we've had that has not been adequately discussed or learned from? What was it? So these are just suggestions for ways that you might structure or focus a particular conversation with your colleagues. Feel free to add your own. The important thing is to talk about it. Get it out of the closet. Don't turn it into a taboo, because to do so is to turn your back on one of the best resources that you and your team have already created. In the middle of those failures, like coal hiding diamonds, are some insights that can really help your business become more successful, help you better understand your customers, your market, your competitive situation, and maybe even yourself. So thanks for listening. We'll be back in our next installment. In the meantime, good luck today. See you later.